What is the benefits of having provisioning system is, it has the ability to measure what are the short-term objectives you can achieve in the provisioning. Is main benefit of cloud computing is updating the services time to time. It is not only a management process, but it is also a service. Hello students, welcome to the next session of Cloud Computing and Big Data Analytics. I am Dr. Soumyashri from Department of Computer Science, Vidhyaashram College. In this session, let's know about the benefits of provisioning, that is cloud provisioning. How to get that, what are the benefits of the provisioning in the cloud management. Alright. The thing is, we have certain benefits of provisioning. As we know, provisioning is a service which has group of compliant processes. That is, the agreed upon processes which makes a group, a set of process, similar process which can be assigned to a customer, which is called as the provisioning. So, one of the benefit of provisioning is the ability to measure the progress of all the work related to one comments, that is request for comment. You need to give a feedback. So what is the progress of the work in the cloud? So that will be tracked by using the provisioning method. Another advantage is continuous improvement activities. You have to improve the service that you are giving to the customers based on process measurement. You have the group of process. You have to measure the performance of the process. How does the process is performing and whether the customers are satisfied with the process service or not. You have to check the improvement of the activities in the services or the process. Another advantage is isolation of the building, installing, configuring and customizing the tasks. You have to customize the task, along with you have to build the task, install, configure, as well as you have to customize or manage the task. Where does from these tasks comes is from the requirements design. You will be having the requirements design which takes the requirements from the customers. Based on that, you have to generalize, you have to install and build and manage the different tasks for different process, and you have to track the hardware activities also. You have to isolate the hardware activities from the software and you have to manage all these things with the provisioning process. Along with that, we have the role players performing a finite set of repeatable activities like taking a report or generating a graph based on a report or taking a decision based on this type of decision or this type of tracking. Suppose you have a chart, you have a flow chart where if it happens, you have to take this. If this happens, you have to make this. There will be repetition of some of the activities. Not every activity will be new for every process. Some of the services tasks will be repeating, like opening a service, closing a service, halting a service or resuming a service. All these things will be repeated activities which will not change. So that such finite set of activities will be carried out by some of the role players. Role players are nothing but some of the applications. So which control the repeatable activities, how they have to repeat, like switching off the systems or when the subscription fee ends, ending the process or ending the service to a customer. All these things are repeating activities, isn't it? Finite set of repeatable activities. All these things must be performed or must be controlled by the role players. All right. Along with that, an assembly line approach to provisioning. There will be an assembly line approach to the provisioning. That means you have a particular methodology that can be followed for having the provisioning method. Like we have the evolution criteria categories for cloud management wheel. You have the cloud management. All these things will be managed by like brokerage, life cycle, governance and automation. All these will make you a provision or a group of service. Next thing is to know about the long-term goals in the provisioning. What you need to achieve in the provisioning of the processes. So, one of the long-term goal is to achieve the operational efficiencies. You have to get the operational efficiencies by using a common set of processes. You have to group the common set of processes and procedures which will make the provisioning. That is set of agreed upon process or similar kind of processes to deliver provisioning services to the enterprise. Suppose if you have a private cloud, you have to use common set of processes and procedures to deliver provisioning service to the entire enterprises. There will be some process that are repeated like testing procedures or analyzing procedures or designing procedures. Some of the procedures will be of same category. So, this similar category of process will be grouped to form a provision. Alright. The another long-term goal of the provisioning is achieving the target environmental defect rate. So, you have to know the defects that can happen because of the environment in the cloud, not in the outside environment, not the greenery or something, environment of the cloud service. So, it must be achieved by using the provisioning. You have to set up an environment for the customer which gives you the set of process like Google Apps. It is a provision which has agreed upon process or group of processes like maybe Gmail or YouTube or Google Docs or maybe Classroom. We have similar set of process which is called as a single provision. We have to achieve a target environmental defect rate. You have to minimize the errors and the defects that can happen in a provisioning environment. Next thing, the next long-term goal in provisioning is establish and achieve service level objectives. You have to give the service level objectives. What are the objectives you need to establish and achieve? What are the services you need to achieve in the provisioning? Another long-term goal is reduce the time. Which time you have to reduce is to set development and test environment. You have to reduce the time required to set the environment. You need certain time for development of an application or development of a process or developing a testing environment. So, we have discussed this in testing under cloud, isn't it? So, the long-term goal of provisioning is to reduce the time to set up all these environments like setting or general development services. Another long-term goal in provisioning is to reduce. What has to be reduced is either the hardware or software spending through optimization. You have to make the usage of the hardware and the software optimized, because by creating too much of copy, you are giving burden to the hardware or software in the provision or cloud service. You have to reduce the pressure on the hardware component, or either the hardware or software or both hardware and software. You cannot create too much copy of, or you cannot create too much copy in the virtualization which gives a heavy work or workload, more workload on the hardware and the software components. That means you have to optimize the use of these components by using the provisioning. Okay. Next goal is to reduce the enterprise provisioning standards. To reduce the enterprise provisioning standards. That means you have to set a standard for the services you are providing to the enterprise. You have to reduce the enterprise provisioning standards. You have to set a standard for the enterprise using the cloud provisioning. All right. What are the short-term objectives you can achieve in the provisioning is, one is to reduce the defect rate that can happen at this particular moment, not in the long term. Long term defects are like running out of the memory, reducing the performance of the services. All these things will be long term defects. The short term defects will be the breakdown of the system or services not available, network down, or all these things will be defect that can happen at this moment. The short-term objective of the provisioning is to reduce the defect rate. By grouping a similar kind of process, you can make the customer to access the service even though there are some of the defects present in the system. Alright. Another short-term objective in provisioning is to improve and to provide consistency in the service. So you have to maintain the consistency of the service you are going to provide. Alright. Next thing is transferring skills and knowledge of new standard process and procedures. You have to be able to transfer the skills and the knowledge of new standard process. If you have updated the process, if you have a standard process, you have to have the transfer skills. You can have the transferring, easy method of transferring the process and the procedures from one location to another location by using the provisioning process. Alright. The next short-term objective of provisioning is to gain the stakeholder agreement. Okay. Why do you need the stakeholder agreement? Is to reduce the rework. When you do the rework is when you have too much defects or too much problematic process. Okay. What you have to do is you have to rework. At the time of rework, the service may not be available to the customer. What you have to do? You have to gain the stakeholder agreement that all the services have been provided to the stakeholder. Stakeholder is nothing but the customer. You have to make the stakeholder agree that all the services have been provided to him. Okay. You have to reduce the rework of provisioning or allocating services to the same customer repeated times. You have to reduce rework because same copy may have been assigned to the same customer several times. It increases the time duration required for the service availability and it may increase the workload over the hardware and the software components. So you have to reduce the rework by provisioning. What you will do is, by using the provisioning facility or service, you'll give all those services bundled in a group and will be pushed to the customers at once. So it reduces the work of the cloud. The another objective of the provisioning is to improve the quality of work experience. So to improve, you have to improve. What is the thing you need to take care in each and every service is you should not stay at the same level. What you need to do is you have to improve the quality day by day. You have to improve the service. Whatever may be the service, there may be certain kind of problem that can arise at any moment. What does the customer requires or stakeholder demands is uninterrupted service all the time at any location. That means you have to constantly improve the quality of the work experience to satisfy the stakeholder or to make stakeholder contented with your service. Okay. Next thing we need to know in cloud management is how to manage the assets of the cloud. Okay. So, asset management and change management interact regularly. There will be a regular interaction in asset management and change management. We have to know how to manage the asset and change in the environment of the cloud. Okay. The asset management strategy includes some of the things you need to consider to manage an asset, like software packaging, incident management, pool management, release management, configuration management, systems management, operational read lines management, and the backup management. Okay, you need all these things to manage the asset in the cloud environment. Okay, let's look at each of this in detail. First thing is software packaging. So, software packaging means asset management relies on packaging the software. What is this packaging of the software is? You need similar kinds of software, or you may be having similar kinds of software in your cloud. You have to make the group of these softwares which can be termed as software packaging. For a better asset management, you need to know what are the kinds of assets you have in your cloud service. What are the assets? Do you have property? Do you have land? Do you have a vehicle? Do you have money? They are not the assets in terms of cloud. What are the assets in terms of cloud is the hardware components, software components, and the services. These are all the assets we have studied in the previous sessions. Okay, so this asset management relies on how do you group the softwares, okay, which comes for the quality of the cloud service. Okay, the asset management will only engage software packaging directly when there is an exception. Even though the asset management relies on the software packaging to provide a software to the stakeholder or to the customer, it will directly engage software packaging only when there is an exception in the situation. When it exclusively needs the software packaging, then only it uses the facility of the software packaging. So, incident management can be used whenever there is a situation of problem management. So, this management or the situation of business is as usual. That means it is an incident. Business is running normally. So, in such a case, you have to make the asset management service available and you have to track the interruption that can happen in this asset management service. Okay. So, the incident management will be an entry point. You have to know what actually happened. If you know what actually happened, you can easily manage the problem. Alright. The next thing you need to consider in asset management is the pool management. Pool is nothing but group, isn't it? So, pool management works with, again, the asset management. How it works is to make sure that the services or the products that are requested by the stakeholder are available. Availability has to be ensured. Who will do this is the pool management process. Okay. On the requested date and time. at that particular date and time the service is available. Who are going to ensure these things? The pool management is going to do this task of ensuring the availability of the requested service. Alright. The pool management also serves as the intermediary. Which intermediary? Process between asset management. We have the asset management and cloud on demand or IOD process and activities. Cloud on demand or infrastructure on demand services process. So, it is an intermediary. That means the asset management has to ensure what are the different asset services that will be available to the stakeholder, and infrastructure on demand. The customer or the stakeholder request for a new infrastructure or a new hardware component. So how does the asset management knows what are the demands of the stakeholder? What is the hardware or the infrastructure the stakeholder has demanded? He may not be knowing asset management. The pool management acts as an intermediary between the asset management and the demand of the new infrastructure by the stakeholder. Alright, next comes is the release management. So we have the release management. What does this release management will do is, it controls the scheduling or it controls the scheduling and testing of additions and updates to environment. As we know, the main thing or main benefit of cloud computing is updating the services time to time. You need not to worry about the updates of the services, isn't it? So if the updates are available at particular interval time, the stakeholders will be much satisfied with the service of the cloud, isn't it? Who are going to check with the scheduling of the updation or scheduling of the updates when it has to be updated? Suppose you have a browser, you have a Visual Studio software, you have a PHP software, it has to be updated. When it is to be updated, after 90 days, it has to get updated. Who is going to track these 90 days? How many days are over? It has to be updated. Today, the 90th day will be over of that particular software subscription. It has to be updated tomorrow. Who are going to keep track of these dates and times? This date and time will be the release management. It controls the scheduling and testing of additions and updates to the environment. If some other supporting files are added to the existing service or it has to be updated, all these schedulings will be controlled and testing will also be done. Once the update is done, whether the service is running properly or executing properly, all these things will be ensured by the release management. Next comes is the configuration management. Who are going to do this? What is the task of configuration management? Configuration management helps in the absence of process. If nothing is available, process is not available with its own repository, it was not loading from the memory. Suppose the stakeholder has requested for a new infrastructure or for a new service or for a new hardware component. How does this will be fulfilled? Suppose in memory it is not loading from the memory. There may be a problem and the component or the infrastructure is not loading or the software is not loading. Okay, what you can do or what the cloud can do, instead of halting the system, it can start the process or it can resume the process with the help of its own repository, like a backup. You have the backup of the services. You can take the process which is absent for the service of the stakeholder. It is not available for the stakeholder. You can immediately access this process from the repository for assets and inventory items. All these things will be managed by the configuration management. Configures the process. Okay. Next thing is the systems management. What is this systems management will do is, it is both the process as well as a service. It is managing the entire system. It is not only a management process, but it is also a service. Okay. What does the systems management will do is, a matured system management, a well-planned, well-established systems management will determine the triggers. What are the triggers that can accelerate a problem or which can generate a trouble in the service or in the cloud? It determines the triggers or thresholds. Thresholds is hindrance or blockage in the asset management or providing an asset to the stakeholder. We have that problem. We may have the problem of accessing a service from the cloud. Service is an asset, isn't it? So, it determines the triggers, which is triggering this problem. What are the possible thresholds? What are the possible problems that can happen? And what are the attributes of operating system, hardware and software has to be managed? All these things will be done by the systems management. That is managing the entire system, the operating system, hardware as well as the software components. Any system will have only these three things, isn't it? The operating system, the hardware and the software components. You have to manage all these things. Entire these components will form the system, isn't it? So, this will be done by the systems management. Alright. Next is the operational readiness management. Okay. The operational readiness management will perform the asset management interaction with operational readiness, whether the system or the service is ready for operating or not. As other projects and services are ready, the operational readiness management will continuously or constantly checks whether a particular service is ready for provision to the stakeholder or not. So, this will be carried out by the operational readiness management. Okay. Next thing is, everything has been done. What is the last thing you have to do is, you have to back up the services, isn't it? There may be any type of damage that can happen because of some virus or network problem or natural calamity. Anything can happen. How do you protect or how do you protect the service that is provided is by the mean of backup management. What does the backup management will do is, the enterprise process management links to backup management. So, EPM is linked to backup management after the new server is added to the backup script. You have to add new system for backing up the data. So, how do you back up the services? What is the mode of backup? When do you back up it? You are not going to back up regularly, or you will get the backup of the service and the data with a particular time interval, say 24 hours, 48 hours, 1 week or 2 days or 3 days. There will be time interval. So, this time interval fixing, where the backup has to be stored, what are the services that are critical and has to take the backup of these, and what are the backup that must be stored of a data. All those things will be carried out in the backup management. Okay. All these management skills come under the concept of how to manage the asset in the cloud. As you know, asset is nothing but the services that are provided by the cloud, is it not? Okay. So this is about the asset management. In the next session, we are going to know about the other concepts of the cloud management like cloud governance. Okay. Thank you.